sort of informal way. So we're going back. You first met Wally. It's the following morning of Stonehenge.
Yeah, I actually spoke to him and had conversation and coffee, most important.
And did he invite you to join the Wallies?
Well, everyone who was there was Wally. You know, you came to Stonehenge. You know, that first festival. You were a Wally.
I mean, did anyone sort of explain to you the concept of the Wallies?
Yeah, well, we all had various bits of the picture, I think, and Phil did train us very well in what to tell the press and so on for maximum effect. But yeah, there was a definite ethos, and the around Stonehenge and the sun and all inclusiveness. I mean, in a lot of ways, we should be talking about the Wallies rather than Wally, because it was a community. From the word go, and that's what he was setting up, a community that was set to expand.
I mean, did you get just quick to fire off? Did you get the sense that he was the leader or was the leader? Because I get different reports on this.
He was like the catalyst and the initiator. I mean, he wasn't there giving us instructions and wagging his finger all the time. Phil had a life away from the site and at the site, because I mean, Stonehenge was, and including the squats as well as the camp at the Drove. That lasted for a few years, and Wally wasn't always there. And the idea that he was some kind of cult leader is just ridiculous. Like, we had our own ideas, and we.
On the subject of not always being there, do you know where he was staying?
I used to meet him other places as well.
Right.
There was a famous venue in London, the Meet Roxy, like where there was squat gigs and so on, and I ran into him there a couple of times.
The Meet Roxy?
Yeah.
Right, where was that?
Well, Notting Hill area. I mean, don't quote me on the actual postcode, but it was a famous underground venue at the time. And where various bands played, people's bands, and he was involved in a bit of art dealing of some kind or another in that area, and that was also as much part of his life as the Wally squats were. So he wasn't like permanently there on a throne telling us what to do. Yeah.
So going back to chronologically, so like you stayed on at Stonehenge.
Yeah.
Then there's about 30 Wallies stayed on at Stonehenge. Then the Department of Environment put in the court order, and everyone was summoned to the High Court. And this is August '74. Were you involved in any of that, the court case?
No, I wasn't involved in the court case. I mean, my friend Fritz, aka Clarence, he was one of the guys who went there, and so I was close to that circle, but it was a fairly fluid population. When you say 30, 40 people, and there was people going away and other people turning up. I mean, I went back to the site straight after Windsor because there was pretty much nowhere else to go. I was kind of traumatised by policemen and official society. I thought, well, Stonehenge is the place to be rather than back in a town. So that's what drew me back to it. And while I was there was like big force 8, force 10 gale. So we thought, well, let's go and crack some squats in Amesbury. So I was there for that rather than the court case side of things.
Can you describe the squat in Amesbury? What was it like?
Well, I went through various permutations. I mean, the first squat was down on the main street, but the longest established ones were on London Road, and there was like 3 buildings, 2 on one side, 1 on the other, up on London Road. Those are the longest established Wally squats. And I was there quite a lot of the time, and Wally would turn up occasionally as well. Like the day he was arrested, for instance.
Yeah. I mean, so you moved to the squats in Amesbury throughout Christmas. Oh, hold on. Can we also cover Windsor '74 as well? You were at Windsor '74.
Yeah, and I was there when Wally was talking to the press. I heard the tape that Dean did recently, and I was like, I was there all over again. Yes.
So, can you describe what Windsor '74 was like?
Well, it was something you heard about on the grapevine. Let's get down to the festival. So I had no anticipation of trouble. Although I did, I was a bit taken aback by some of the harder drug use that I saw on site. There wasn't a whole lot of it. There was certainly no reason for the police to come in mob-handed, which they did, and that was quite traumatic. I felt even less like participating in mainstream society after seeing what it was capable of against some fairly gentle people. like the Hare Krishnas who were there till the end. With like police with truncheons coming in as the circle. The Hare Krishnas were there in the circle, and hippies saying, don't fight them, turn them on, and stuff. So there's no need for all that brutality.
What was the mood like directly afterwards? Like your own mood, your own feeling and
I
feels.
certainly didn't want to go back to the straight world.
Yeah.
It felt like Stonehenge was the only place to go to get back. From Windsor, well, hitchhiked straight back to Stonehenge.
Yeah. So after that, you moved to Amesbury. So how long were you actually staying in the squats yourself in Amesbury?
On and off. Well, it was a fairly fluid population. People used to leave and come back, and there was new faces sometimes. I didn't know everybody who was there throughout the whole period because I wasn't there over the whole period. But it was an open door. We used to find hitchhikers turning up at Stonehenge, and we say, "Well, do you want to come back to the squats and crash tonight?" and so on. So it was very, very open door. But it was again, there was the sense of community, but with fairly fluid rules. That was interesting, and that drew me. It was a place to stay where you didn't have to live up to some standard or other. You just had to contribute a bit.
Yeah. So we're going into 75 now, and preparations for the second Stonehenge.
Yeah.
It was Stonehenge 75. Were you involved in the promotion of Stonehenge?
Well, apart from being resident Wally, not particularly. I mean, we were a very visible sign of the intention to have a festival. People knew what the Wallies were about. We were doing our counterculture thing, but no, I wasn't out sticking posters up or whatever. When I turned up, originally I was basically a teenage runaway, so I wasn't a very responsible person. You know what I'm saying? But I was aware of it all and supportive of it all.
So you were there the day he got arrested, which I believe was April 75.
No, April or May, yeah.
Yeah, I think it was April.
May the 5th.
Was it May the 5th?
Yeah.
May the 5th be with you. Right.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what you remember that day?
Well, there was a young lad called Scotty who was an even younger teenage runaway, and I believe it was actually his acid, but Phil was... said, no, I'll take the rap and I'll give a... Can
you talk to us about the raid? When
Well, there was 3 houses, so different people saw different things. And I'm not even exactly sure where Phil was when the police first turned up either. But I do remember that he wanted to make an ideological point about acid rather than have this young guy go to court. Yeah. And that was fairly typical of him.
So he took the rap for someone else?
Yeah.
So basically they found the acid and he...
And he put his hand up, yeah.
Were you there when that happened?
Yeah.
Right, so what was his word? Sorry, I know it's a long time ago.
Well, obviously he didn't tell the police, I'm going to be giving a big spiel in court to say how wonderful LSD is, and I think but that was his kind of idea, that it was a sacrament and what have you, and that he could use this as a platform and at the same time get this young man out of trouble. Because he felt, the force was with him, as it were. Yeah. And sometimes he was very charismatic and could make things happen. But as I told you, he was very vulnerable and a bit naive.
So he was basically sacrificing himself for because his history, that he got put in prison at a very early age for drugs. So he was obviously trying to prevent that bad experience happening to someone else.
Yeah.
Did you see him? Because I'm trying to get images for the film.
Yeah.
Did you see him get taken away by the police?
As I understand it, he marched down to the police station. Yeah. I think they already had Scotty, but I might be misremembering. But that was my impression. Certainly, was they had Scotty and he intervened. But no, I saw images, and I recall images of him in the middle of the road, immediately post raid. So that makes sense of what I've been told since, is that he marched down and did it rather than got taken away.
Yeah, I've had quite a few others say that he went down to the police station. When he wasn't going to be arrested, he kicked one of them in the balls.
You can make it.
Otherwise, he wouldn't have been arrested.
Yeah.
They'd have told him to go off again.
So what was there a plan after? So was Phil the only one arrested?
Well, initially, I guess young lad Scotty was in the frame.
And also, when I think of this, what did you call him? Did you call him Phil? Because obviously, if you called him Wally, everyone's called Wally. That would have been a bit confusing. So, did you call him Wally Hope, or did you call him Phil?
Both. Yeah, Wally, Phil, and Andy is a very omnipresent man. Of course, we all called each other man, which is very convenient when the police ask, who are you with? Who did you get this from? I don't know. We just called each other man. So we had a variety of short names for each other.
So after he got arrested, did the Wallies have a meeting, decide to do anything? What was the mood?
Well, there was no official committee or anything. It was fairly anarchic. Yeah.
I mean, did you? I don't want to feed lines, but did you maybe just think that he was going to be let out straight away? That it was,
Yeah, we didn't think it was necessarily going to be a big deal, but then we heard he'd been sectioned. Yeah.
So what was your reaction when you heard he'd been sectioned?
Well, it's not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. Yeah.
But what was your feeling like, Father? I mean, obviously, it's not, like maybe to do something about it, or maybe.
There were various ideas about springing him and so on from various parties. But as I understand it, he sprung himself at least once. Yeah.
Oh, he heard the escapes?
Mm.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
What did you hear?
Well, there's conflicting versions of it. Where did he go? And, did he actually go to the Stones incognito, or did he sod off somewhere else? So part of the legend in a lot of ways is what did he do in those hours of freedom? Yeah. But what really brought me back to the Stones was the news that he died. Yeah. And
where do you remember where you were when you heard that he died?
Yeah, I was in a squat in the Midlands at the time.
And how was the news spoken to you?
Saw it in the newspapers originally. It was fairly big news, and it was almost as if they wanted everyone to know, because you think the Wallies were small and incidental to the Times. It did make quite a big story. And I was with another Wally at the time. I said, I really think we ought to go back. And we did, and the police came round to gloat shortly thereafterwards. Your leader's choked on his own vomit and all this. So, trying to demoralise us or whatever, but I didn't achieve very much, because they weren't the kind of people you listened to.
But what were your own thoughts? Because of course the initial reports was that he died. They didn't know why.
Mm-hmm.
There was going to be an inquest.
Yeah.
What were your own thoughts?
Well, I ought to be with my people, basically. It wasn't anything I could do about it. He was actually dead, and the facts were, at variance. I mean, like I say, the police were trying to give it as if it was a straightforward barbiturate overdose at home, which is not the case. I mean, he was actually taken to hospital still alive. So there was already a spin on it within hours of it happening. But I definitely felt I ought to be with the other Wallies at the Wally squats. Where else was there to be? Yeah, it's one of those times. Yeah.
And then there was after the prolonged inquest, the official verdict was suicide. Did you?
I don't buy that at all. I mean, I saw him at Watchfield. In the meantime, between the arrest and him dying, and he gave a very different impression. He was a totally different man. He wasn't this glowing, charismatic solar guy anymore. He was quite dark, and I thought they'd broken him.
Oh.
And that's
so always one, isn't it?
There's always bloody
always one.
You Wally.
So, can you take us back to where you saw him in Watchfield? Did you see him inside the teepee at Watchfield?
No, there was hangars at Watchfield, and there was like some kind of hall before part of the building where there's a minor entrance, not the one the planes used to come in and out. And I think the doors were off, and we were just stood there because it was a bit sheltered, and the Bishop of Reading was there, and this young man comes along and says, I've reason to believe you're the head of Thames Valley Drug Squad, which totally embarrassed the Bishop. And Wally turned up about the same time in a combat jacket, which was totally unlike him. I mean, it was usually a sort of white fringed jacket with embroidery and stuff and this was like sort of dark and huddled guy, right? Totally different man. But there was still a bit of the spark there. It was like he wanted to make something happen, but he what? We weren't, Watchfield wasn't the place, Stonehenge was the place. And so it was quite a fractured sort of festival, Watchfield, and he did seem like they'd broken him. So what killed him, may well have been something they did to him previously, because they used to give the Cray twins loads and loads of like Jackdaw and what have you. It was like they'd done the same sort of excessive stuff on him. They'd broken him chemically. That was my impression. And I feel a bit vindictive about that to this day.
I mean, what do you think is Wally's legacy now?
I think he kind of deserves it. Stonehenge was a massive countercultural event which centred on him and his vision, confused and psychedelic, but also somehow workable. We wanted to create a community and an alternative structure that you could live outside of mainstream society, but not hating it and opposing it, influencing it for the better with love, which is naive hippie bollocks in some ways, but it's not bad, is it? It's not something you kill someone over. So,
what's your own feelings about his death?
Irate, really.
But what do you think actually happened? Because I mean, I don't think he really committed suicide, did he?
I don't think so. But I don't know what he was being prescribed or if he was being prescribed anything. I know, but they were into giving psychiatric patients large quantities of drugs, especially if they thought they were trouble. And that was my impression of what happened. His time in the manor was not a good time.
So, what's your over enduring memory of Phil? And that's what we're sitting now talking about him 40 years later. And what's the thing that sticks most in your mind about him?
No, but the positive side of him. That he was there to be a spokesman. He wasn't trying, to jump on a bandwagon and be a leader. He was actually making things happen, and he was a very positive force, a creative force. He was interested in art, mysticism, and that's the side of him I remember, rather than what they turned him into briefly.
Well, I've heard from some people that he had this ability of being able to talk for hours on end about certain things. So have you ever been on the receiving end of one of those diatribes?
Oh yeah, I've been around when Wally's giving his spiels, yeah.
Can you talk a bit about that?
Well, it was very positive, and out of context, some of it doesn't make a lot of sense. You got, there was the free festival movement, and things like squats, and not just squats to live, but squat venues and people's bands and things. And Phil was in the middle of all that maelstrom of the counterculture, and saying that we can be alternative and have our own infrastructure and way of life. Which in a lot of ways we did, things like the Travellers and the Free Festival scene, which were like places you could go to on a map at different times of year and stuff, and be a self-sustaining community. Phil could see that as a positive, sustainable thing, and did his best to make it happen.
I'd like to take you back, this is my final question, take you back to 1974.
Right.
And I want you to sort of describe, basically the opening words of the sentence is, the first time I saw Phil, I want you to say, the first time I saw Phil, or Wally Hope, whichever name you prefer, and then I want you to describe what you saw the first time you saw Wally Hope, Phil Russell.
I saw a very English, very vocal, charismatic guy, blonde, dressed in a white fringed Native American kind of jacket with embroidery, talking into a microphone at Stonehenge as if it was some kind of 20th century version of a solar ritual, and he was a witch doctor or something. So it was before rap, so I can't say he was rapping, but there was that sort of DJ vibe as well as shaman. Or showman, he was all of them, and it was happy, and it was inclusive, and I was just like a teenage runaway saying, "Oh, what's this? Do I want to get into this or not?" And I did.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.